First off, Sepehr, I know you and I know each other, but
Yes.
maybe not everyone does. So you wrote a book recently. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yes. My name is Sepehr Pakbaz. I'm a cloud solution architect in Microsoft. I've been a software developer for over 23 years. I kind of started officially, I started programming right before .NET was released, but when the .NET OG.NET came out like 2001, I think. That's where I kind of like jumped on the .NET bandwagon and C Sharp. I was a big object-oriented programming, geek back then. And yeah, the name of the book that I just wrote, it took 2 years to write it. It's called Understanding Microservices with .NET. So
Okay.
yeah, the book is intended for folks who are not new to programming, but just want to understand what's microservice and what's what's the nuances around it. And I noticed when I read started opening the book, it was originally supposed to have like chapters, also sections. So chapter this 22 chapters book, there should be five sections. Section one is architecture and design, which is chapter 1 through 5. Then development is chapter 6 through 13, and deployment is 14 through 17. Monitoring and recommendation is the next two sections going to be 18, 19, and 20 to 22. So that's kind of like how I, in my mind, how I created the framework for it. And my favorite, of course, because I'm a solution architect, is the first five chapters because that's kind of gets into the architecture. But of course, like development, deployment, monitoring, it's going to be equally, if not more important, is as important.
What was the talk? What did you really enjoy about writing the book? Like what? For me, when I
Yeah,
wrote my book, like it was a lot like I guess learning the piano. It was just you go to work every day, you put in your time, like 6 to 8 hours
yeah,
a day. Was that what is
yeah.
like for you?
Yeah, it was honestly I was approached like over 2 years ago by BD Publishing on LinkedIn. They said, we were looking for an author to write a book about .NET microservices. Obviously, like, I was always interested in the process of writing book. I before this is my first book, but I was a technical reviewer for another book. It was called The Machine Learning Solution Architect Handbook by David Ping. That's
Mm.
that's where I was at AWS, and he's also at AWS. He's an architect at AWS. So it's very very AWS focused. But this is the first book that I kind of had freedom to choose. The thing that I enjoyed the most was the process of thinking of laying out kind of like a story. And the way I wanted to put it out there was I wanted it to be a little timeless. I know it's like it's really hard to do with the technology book because it's going to be obsolete.
Right.
But the process that I enjoyed it was like I made sure that there are elements to it that is timeless, and I think that there is so many parts that are timeless, but also, I wanted to. There are a few books that I really really enjoy, and I know like you probably do too, like Domain Driven Design by Eric Evans, Gang of Four, Design Patterns, Designing Data Intensive, the application by Martin Kleppman. These are all classics, right? I really wanted there's some elements of essence of these books to be in this book as well.
Yeah,
If that
I was gonna talk to you about. I mean, in the field of microservices, there's dozens, hundreds of books, right?
Yes.
Um, what is your book delivered at? Like, what's the elevator message for me? And you're not doing this for 100 level people. These are for people who are experienced programmers, developers,
Yes.
and they really want to move their design to the next level. There's a lot of
Correct.
detail on implementation that I just loved.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
talking about the elevator pitch.
Yeah, the elevator pitch in this one is that I wanted really a book to be um I don't want to say reference book, but more like something that you can go back to and find things that is most interesting. Also, I wanted it to be practical, right?
Mhm,
So there's
mhm.
a lot of these books around like microservices. It's just like very much talk about like, oh, very high level stuff. But specifically on the development part of it, I literally like, there's an eShop. I know I'm sure you know that there's a .NET eShop reference architecture. It's like if you go to github.com/.net/eShop, it's been evolving over the years, which is like the way it should be, by the way. That is, it's more like a reference architecture for like an e-commerce based on latest and greatest best practice on .NET. So the chapter 6 through 13 is really just embodies that
Mhm.
design from that eShop, at least the way it is right now. But of course the architecture is, there's a code that the software architects are, it's as important to know about things than being up to date. So there are so many things that you have to keep yourself up to date, and I really wanted it to kind of like capture the essence of like what's latest and greatest on so many of these patterns. So that would be my elevator pitch. Is like I kind of collected the best practices that I gathered over the years.
Yeah, and I enjoy that. I think when I read through your book, what I really liked was you're not just talking high level, but you're actually going through an implementation.
Yes.
But we all know frameworks change over time.
Correct.
Patterns, that's a little more timeless. So you talk about the circuit breaker, you talk about retry patterns, you talk about, asynchronous communications, you talk about Saga. So what do you actually like? Of those patterns, what were you most excited to talk about in your book?
Yeah, yeah. So um, I would say, um the patterns, the way I look at it is that these are, they're specific for specific purposes, right? It's not that they're like one of them is my favorite and whatnot. So CQRS, for example, like the pitch for it is that if the essentially if the eventual consistency, there's also a fight between eventual consistency and of course, like, the pain of scaling, right? So that's kind of like so the way I look at it is this. I go to Home Depot. There are thousands of items on
Right.
on the shelves, right?
Uh-huh.
And each one of them have hundreds of iterations to become where they are, right? I can't just get all of them. And they're not, I don't have any favorite tool, right? I by the way, I kind of started like doing some home renovation stuff like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I don't say I'm good at it, but I'm much better. And the
Right.
way I'm doing this because I do research, I watch YouTube videos, I go to Home Depot and literally like look at the tools and reading stuff about it. So you can do stuff without tools. We can do stuff without power tools,
Mhm.
but you're gonna hurt yourself and it's going to take you 10 times longer, and the result is not going to be that good. So that's exactly what these patterns are. There are patterns that are really smart people develop over the years and perfected it. You can pick and choose the ones that you as it suits you, but you don't have to take like hundreds of them. You can pick like two or three of them. Depends on the application that they are. So that's one of the things about architects that I really think that they have to step up their game. Is that there's some architects that they call them, they have a syndrome of they call them, um, they basically old school, right? They have like, they have some patterns in mind. They have some sort of trauma that they had some problems with something, and they got a pattern that, oh, this is what solved that, and they applied that
Right.
pattern to every single project from then on. It's like, it's like projecting your trauma on everything, right?
Mhm.
So that's the important job of architect is not to, reuse a thing from another project, but think of that project as a new thing. It's like going to the tailor and they made a suit just for you. So you have to perfect it. I mean, you can Google what's microservice architecture, but what
Yeah.
Google doesn't tell you is that is microservice architecture is the right solution for me? It doesn't
Uh,
tell you that. Google doesn't tell you that. You have to know, you have to figure out by studying the code, by studying like the what's the best, and the common sense, really, like just the common sense. It's the most important thing.
that's really, it's funny you mention that because I use the same illustration sometimes. I show people a picture of a Makita Impact hammer drill from Home
Yes.
Depot. And I bought that thing 15 years ago because I had a friend who was making fun of me because all my tools were brand new. And literally, tools are life changing. Like to me, it felt magical that I could just pull that trigger and that torque screw just goes right in,
Yep.
and it's like that opened up everything when it came to work around my house.
Yep.
So yes, you could do it without tools, but if we think about these patterns, it'll save us so much labor
Yeah.
and
And
like a
then
lot
and
of the
then the
best
end result
practices
is
are
going to be
built in.
better. Yes,
Yes.
and the end result is going to be much better.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I love that you're discussing this because, yes, you can talk about high level design, but a lot of those lessons have already been learned by other people and they're embodied
Yeah.
in this.
Yeah, it's like reinventing the wheel. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, totally. Talk to me a little bit in chapter 11. You don't wait too long before you're already talking a little bit about security. Um,
Yeah.
we're enduring in the age of AI where like it's 100 miles an hour now. The frameworks are changing every month. With microservices. Is security easier to handle, or is it more difficult in a way with everything being that distributed?
Oh, yeah, absolutely not at all. Like, security is not getting easier, especially with the microservice architecture. I see so many places that there's major security issues. The security is actually one of my favorite topics, but I don't know if you know that, but
I
I've actually
didn't.
studied a lot on OAuth 2 flows and OIDC extensions and all that. So lot of problems OAuth 2 address and with the OIDC extension, it's much better. But the problem is these flows are not always utilized the way they're designed to be, right?
Mhm.
Most places they are, to be fair, but specifically for, like for example, Pixie, right? Proof key for key exchange. It's specifically designed for SPA and mobile apps, which is used today, right? That's great,
Right.
right? But there is a specific flow for microservices. It's called extension flow or on behalf of flow, or that's essentially token exchange flow. That is
Okay.
specifically designed from service to service communication, whereas the user was involved, which
Mhm.
is most of the cases for microservices that you call or you open a web page and that web page calls something, but depends on the access level that you have. You invoke something, and eventually there's like a system of records, right? You read a record from somewhere or write a record somewhere, or display something somewhere, but your authentication, your identity is attached to it, and it has to go all the way to the database. So
Mhm.
so that's how it should be, right? But instead, what I see is that the first layer show your authentication, everything's good. The auth layer works very well. There is a layer that it's usually like some sort of the API gateway that has like some sort of like services behind. But that's more like an really come like a as in like an eggshell security again, right? So after API gateway, everything's open. Like everything,
Yes.
everybody's talking. The only thing they do is that they define some sort of secure boundaries for these. So there's like some, at least they do some network policies that it's like a service mesh, and there are some good ones like STU and others that they can do like um, uh, end-to-end encryption. But it's not on the application layer. It's more like on networking layer mostly, or on firewall layer. There's some. It's not really um, zero trust, you know,
Yes.
implementation, right? So zero trust is the thing that everybody's talk about, right?
And I think that's interesting because, like your book, most of the examples we see, it's the eggshell security. where it's like we're just using very base. Once you're through, you're in, and everything is your book in chapter 11 actually goes into detail about using OpenID Connect, and we're going to use OAuth 2,
Yes.
and let's use JWT tokens for internal calls.
And
Let's use
I'll tell you a little
Artifact
bit
them. It's
about things.
demonstrated.
I tell
Yes.
you a little bit about this one. So originally, the way I laid out the book was that every chapter has its own security. But I was like, okay, so it doesn't make sense to kind of like touch over security over and over again. It's kind of nice to have its own chapter.
Yeah.
So I made its own chapter, but the problem became like, okay, now I have to go back to those like chapters, then I have to reference them, but each one of them is different. So I
Mm.
kind of gone back to the same thing that I clearly said I didn't want you to do. Now I'm doing it like myself because I'm like saying, okay, there is and by the way, then the reference app, the eShop, it's the same thing. It has a
Uh-huh.
security microservice, which is like
Right.
an more like token SDS, like a secure token service, right? That issues tokens and all that stuff, which is, by the way, you shouldn't do also. It's something that they call it, identity as a service. That's the thing. And if
Hmm.
you can just delegate this to someone that is its job to do it, like there's Entra and there's other ones that's out there that does this stuff really well because this stuff is hard, right? You really don't want to handle that. You don't want to be the one who issues tokens. You can do that, but it's like again, it's like that's not your specialty. It's like reinventing the wheel because someone else is
Yes.
doing it better than you do.
Right.
But you can implement your architecture of the app the way that it's not it's following zero trust by
Hmm.
using the exchange flows that, like I said, like for instance, I see so many of these um, services. They talk to each other with the client credential flow. Client credential flow is not really user flow. It's
Mm.
it's designed for server to it's like a server to server communication where the user is not involved.
Mm.
Or it's really because all you do is to just so you provide a key ID and a key. It doesn't have any user context in it. But the user context is important when you talk about application that has the user, it's user centric. Like for example, a system of record. So
Mm.
me and you could have different access levels. Why we should use the same key to get the information in somewhere down the line in one of those services. That does it make sense?
Perfectly. Yeah. Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about patterns. I just want to loop back real quick. This is kind of embarrassing, but um, I remember I was asked a few years ago, and I did a presentation on microservices and their advantages and this and this and this and this, and then I had someone raise their hand and says, "Well, my team's just like 4 or 5 people, or it's pretty small as a company."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, well, then microservices really wouldn't be a good fit for you. It's too complex." Terrible answer. I think you'd
Yes,
agree. I
terrible
mean,
answer.
it's I had to go back and apologize. So because I talked to some people since then, and they're like, no, we use microservices literally everywhere. It saves us so much work when it comes to things like security, like you just
Yep.
talked about. All of these things, like we don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. It's totally
Yes.
appropriate for small teams.
Yep.
With the proliferation and patterns that we're talking about, do you think that, for teams new to domain-driven design, is it overwhelming? Is it hard to adopt when it comes to microservices?
Yeah, like I said, this is more like a shop, right? You just pick and choose the thing that is right for you, right? And in fact, in chapter 1 and 2, specifically chapter 2, I laid out the reason not to choose the microservices, like you're saying, not about the theme size. It's about what makes sense for you, right? And to the point that the editorial came back to me and say, hey, do you want this book to be sold or not? Because this is chapter 2 sounds like it's discouraging people, and I kind of toned it down a little bit, but it's important because I don't know if you know that there is actually a notorious example for Amazon Prime Video that
Mm.
they went all into the microservices. Not that the microservices is bad, because they didn't have the vision of what is it that they have to do to kind of like distribute this service. And by the way, Netflix is the one, like if you see like literally the first chapter, the first paragraph, I talk about like the OG microservice adapter, and the one who really like arguably like kind of like created this whole movement was
Right.
Netflix,
Was
right?
Netflix.
Which is,
Right.
yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
So, but they didn't did it because it's cool. They did it because it made sense, right?
Right. Right.
But now people just do it because it's just like, because it's everybody else is doing it. That's not right. So what you should do, you should study why do you want to do microservices, and this is important because the people who do that, they end up like, I think I kind of like had a phrase that's distributed monolith. They end up like getting a distributed monolith. What's happening is that they don't know, they don't have any idea what it is and why they're doing it. They just said that, oh, you have to break down your services. So what distributed monolith is the worst of both worlds. So it's basically getting the complicated stuff from the microservices, which is like complicated because you have now
Right.
you have traces that across like multiple application domain. There's like different service, right? But it's add complexity. There is a consistency that we have to worry about. There is this database syncing. But now you also, there's a common layer that you all your things are like kind of like rely on that one. So that's really a monolith, but it's distributed. Now you basically you have a monolith and that is more complex than the monolith. So that's the problem.
I love that so much because I remember I was reading someone who's like, look, he said, we all like to pick on monoliths, but when you think about it, when it comes to debugging, like it's much easier to trace what's happening with a monolith. Like if
Yes.
something's smoking, if there's issues with user authentication, if there's a bug, you can
Yeah.
trace it right. It's always a monolith, right? So
Yep.
when it's distributed software like this, like a services layer like microservices, it's harder to find out where the exact problem is
Oh
happening.
yeah, absolutely. And there are some phantom errors, there are network errors, there are so many things that can happen. Like if you want to really like implement, and one of the reasons, by the way, they don't implement security very well is because of the complexity. Because if you really want to do security well, implement zero trust, you have to do end-to-end encryption with the MTLS, So now you're adding another layer of complexity. Now the service A wants to call service B. It's
Right.
getting all the unauthorized error. Now you have to scratch your head and say, why am I getting unauthorized error? Where I should get I should just get a JSON or something. So that's what I'm saying. The most efficient apps, if you just want to develop very small efficient app that's the most performant, you should actually go with monolith, not
Mhm.
microservice. But
Shocking.
if you want to develop something that is across multiple domains, there's a software that we want to maintain. It's either a SaaS product or an e-commerce app or anything that is like that is has multiple domains and across multiple things. Yeah, microservices does make sense, but then you have to do the domain discovery. You have to do all sort of things, homework, to kind of like understand the things that you want to do and develop your services around the thing that makes sense. Not just because, oh, this service A does this, the service B does that, the service C
Mhm.
does that. So
I love that you're talking about because in chapter 21 you go into like best practices. And you
mhm.
mentioned there's kind of this wave where it's like everyone's excited. We're gonna do this as a microservice orchestration. It's gonna be amazing. You're gonna love it. You know what I mean? So there's this initial first wave of services, but then
Yep.
suddenly there's problems. There's reliability gaps. There's audit demands, spiraling cloud spend. Suddenly
Yep.
these very small, two pizza sized teams start getting bigger and bigger, bigger, and you
Oh
start
yeah.
having these smells that you talk about in the book, things like the classic symptom, a shared database,
Yep.
synchronous daisy chains,
Yes.
having to do coordinated releases with other teams, which I remember very well from my days
Yeah.
as a PM. It was horrible.
Yes.
Uh, so you,
Yeah.
you see this quite often then, like a distributed monolith, where
Yeah,
you start with an
absolutely.
initial first wave of optimism, and then suddenly you get the worst of both worlds.
Exactly. That's what I was talking about. Like it's the distributed monolith thing, and the one of the things that it really comes down to basics. right? The cap theorem, right? Cap theorem is I don't know. Like I remember I heard about cap theorem when I was 20 years ago, right? And really comes down to because there's like a partitioning thing that's given when you're working with the distributed systems. So it
Mhm.
really comes down to availability and consistency, right?
Okay.
So
Right.
that's always a trade-off. So now you have to figure out which trade-off does make sense for each service. And
Hmm.
if you don't understand that, and that's one of the things one of the views that I have with the vibe coders these days, like people who use AI for coding, is that they don't understand the basics. They just have the because AI doesn't have well, I shouldn't say they don't doesn't have a vision, but really doesn't have the context of what you're talking about because you just give it the thing and it does it for you, right? It doesn't have the vision of or like a grand vision of things that you want to build. Sometimes most people they don't know what they want to build. Right? Alone, AI knows what they want to build. So you got to first figure out what you want to build and then tell AI to architect it for you, right? And
Right.
then go implement it as opposed to just first implement it and then because most of the things that you develop with AI, I'm assuming it's going to fall into the same category of distributed monolith. You know, worst of both worlds.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because we had that discussion this morning with John Lamb where he's talking about, hey, Spec Kit is great, but by the way, like that was 4 or 5 months ago, which is eons
Yeah.
ago, and it creates a lot of cruft. It creates a lot of artifacts and documentation and nonsense that frankly make a lot of which you're going to have to go and remove, and that might be difficult. So that's interesting. Uh, about Talk to me a little bit more though, like what do you think teams we in chapter I forget what chapter is it, I think it's 18, you talk about Docker and Kubernetes,
Oh yeah.
containerization. For a lot of this is beaten down ground, but when you're dealing with deploying microservices, suddenly we're having to deploy workloads at scale and it can be quite
Yeah.
overwhelming. What do you think teams struggle with or underestimate
Oh
about
yeah.
running workloads in Kubernetes?
Yeah. That's precisely what Kubernetes came to be, and that's actually one of my favorite all time favorite technologies, Kubernetes. It's really what it is the container orchestrator, right? So
Uh-huh.
so the idea is that you got a bunch of machines, and it kind of came down from like the way that Google was doing their business, like the way that they had like kind of like a commodity hardware like chain together, form a cluster, and then this cluster process like they have nodes, and then they have like pods. And I mean, it wasn't like that, like in Google world, but that's how they built the Kubernetes around that ideas.
Uh-huh.
So really, um, Kubernetes solve a lot of problems as far as like um, managing a lot of things, but most people underestimate it.
Mm.
Even the managed service like AKS, for example, which is a managed Kubernetes cluster, it's hard, right? And people like to say, okay, it's let's do Kubernetes, and then but now the day two comes, and they now they have to manage and operate the cluster. It is hard, right?
Uh-huh.
Even with the fully managed services, there's a resource management thing that you have to worry about. There's permissions. There's like the network policy that I mentioned. All the like security stuff. The DevOps or GitOps in the world of Kubernetes is GitOps is more like the best practice there. Yeah, teams they have a lot of challenges. I've seen a lot of challenges on the networking side when they want to integrate that stuff with their um the VNets and stuff, but also like scaling pods and vertically or horizontally scaling pods, and now I have to talk about like scaling clusters. So that stuff is hard. It's not easy. But I mean, AKS or other managed Kubernetes service, they make it easier for you.
Yes, absolutely. So it's another framework like the technology is definitely empowering, right? Um, I want to circle back a little bit on the monitoring and logging because it's so important with microservices. You don't treat it as an afterthought. Like you talk about it pretty early on and often. And then you
Yeah,
go into
yeah,
book, you talk about Grafana dashboards, you talk about Prometheus, you go into the
yeah,
elk stack, like a specific implementation, right?
yeah. So
So
so yeah.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Very important, obviously. Like, how do you think engineering teams can better connect the work that they're doing to observability, like to business outcomes with the software they're doing? Because you mentioned like, hey, don't just show some key business metrics like the number of checkouts an hour, the value of the orders per day. Like you need to have something that ties in to the flow of the business, is what you
Yeah.
talked about in the book.
Yeah. So quick thing about the elk stack, because we talked about it the other day.
We did.
Also like it's kind of like it's too much of a overhead, right?
Uh-huh.
And the reason I mentioned the elk stack, because that's how I had experience with the elk stack, and it was great. But it nowadays is considered like not the best. When I say nowadays, I mean started the book 2 years ago. Now it's already like people moved on to other stack, for example, LGTM stack, which is Loki, Grafana, Tempo, and Mimira for or Prometheus for metrics. But anyways, I did mention Grafana. So Grafana is a gold standard for visualization
Uh-huh.
when it comes to that. But the Elk stack specifically, because it's Java based, you have to pay the JVM toll, right? And the JVM is heavy, right? It's very memory intensive thing, right? So yeah, so nowadays if I go back and rewrite it, I'll probably go with the kind of like an open telemetry,
Uh-huh.
native stack, which is more like modern and stuff. But 2 years ago, that wasn't the thing, right? That wasn't even ready, right? On all boards. So when I started developing this or writing this book, but anyways, I really believe that this like in everything else that is changing with the AI, this is the center of focus. This is one of the things that people usually go to dashboards and metrics and things like that when things are wrong, or they want to prevent something that can go wrong. So they don't really go there on a regular basis. I mean, I haven't seen a single person enjoying like visiting dashboard like every 10 minutes and all that. So which is why I'm thinking that this is one of those things that will become an AI job to do in the future, and it's going to be really good at it, because there will be very soon, there will be a day that there is a specialized agent for this kind of stuff. You don't need any of this stuff. You don't need any stack at all.
Yes.
All you need is open telemetry enabled, just native stack, very lightweight, very lean, and what it does, it just processes those like on regular basis. It creates dashboards for you, because really what things are like, you have to see the right information with the right format at the right time. That's all it is. That's, by the way, it's not just monitoring. That's the software. That's anything, right? Any software, anytime, by the way, it's timeless thing. So seeing the right data at the right time with the right format, that's it. That's the
Yeah.
software design, defined in a sentence. And really, like, this is going to be changed. This is not going to be the same like in 2 years. In 2 years, all of this stack is going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be obsolete. So it's going to be like AI agent, like maybe multiple agent that
Hmm.
can even work together on one of them could be like alerts, one of them could be you know even automated agent that if there's something happen, it triggers something, or just something to kind of like do self-healing thing, just like the way that Kubernetes is designed. It can even very well be integrated in Kubernetes. By the way, already AKS has the Copilot integrated. If you use CLI AKS, you can actually ask Copilot you don't even need kubectl. You can ask Copilot to do things for you, like how many pods I have, or how many things are running, or what's the memory status. Instead of like going to the dashboard and see all this stuff, you can ask Copilot right now.
That's so cool.
Yes.
Um, do you see the SRE movement, for example? Do you see that kind of how does that kind of, do you like that when it comes to running microservices? Do you see the SRE movement continuing, going stronger? I mean, what?
Yep.
Obviously, I'm a huge fan, but put aside my
Yes.
bias. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. SRE is a key to have to run successful software. And by the way, there's a great book on SRE by Google. It says it literally says SRE. It's like a SRE how Google runs the production systems. That's a great book. That's I learned a lot. I really feel like now that I'm thinking, I really feel like I should have included a chapter on SRE. Really, should have because that's something that is although it's a little bit outside of the scope of this book, to be honest with you, because SRE is its own thing, right? But I really should have included some at least one section in one chapter, or at least one chapter. SRE is really really important. You know, that's the difference. The SRE is the difference between the software that is successful and software that fails, in my
Right.
opinion. Yeah, even though if you do everything right, like architecture and everything right, but you lack SRE capabilities and SRE, infrastructure, or people, the right people, you're dead in the water, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I love that Google put all that information out there for free. Two of those people, Betsy Beyer and Stephen Thorne, actually interviewed. They're fascinating. So I'll put
Yes.
some links in there. But yeah, I agree. I just really love it. I love the fact that we're learning from our mistakes, iteratively getting better. Running systems in production is hard, and learning from it is even harder. You talk about the Golden Hammer library. Why is that like a dangerous smell in your opinion?
Oh, that was the thing that I mentioned, the golden hammer,
Yes.
the
Yes,
distributed
everything's a
monolith.
nail, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah, it's exactly. That's when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and
Mhm.
it's the same thing. You do it for the sake of doing it. It's like right now, like everything's AI, AI. What is makes sense to implement, right? Not just like having A and I in the thing, but does that make sense to do certain things with AI? Does it even add value, or is it just like adding the cost to your software? So that's the thing. That's literally the thing that what I was mentioning about the golden hammer is the distributed monolith is because people just wanted to do it for the sake of doing it, and it's infamously, like I said, um, Amazon Prime. By the way, they published a book, the article about it. If you search Amazon Prime, going back from microservices on Google, it will come up. They
That's
published
cool.
an they went to the monolith. They went back to monolith. Now Amazon Prime, and they saved like 60% or 70%, something like that, money for going back, and the platform was better after because they didn't think it through. They didn't really think this through. They just wanted to do microservices just because Netflix did it. But it was a completely different story for them because this is cloud. That's I mean, obviously, like Netflix is now runs on AWS as well, but it's just different implementation.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I can see your publisher getting like, listen, we're trying to sell microservices, and then you have a whole chapter at the beginning saying, should you do microservices?
No,
So
it was
maybe
it was
you and I should
yeah,
never be selling cars, is what I'm
yeah.
hearing.
It was really really like I guess I went too far, and then the editorial came and say, "Do you want to sell it or you want to tone it down?"
But it's true. It's like we can't sell microservices as being a silver bullet. It's not the appropriate fit for every
That's
every
right.
situation, is it?
That was
That
that was
doesn't
really
mean it's
really
not
my
useful,
intention. And by the
right?
way, the fun fact, because as you know, I'm a boomerang. I came back to Microsoft a few months. In the interview, they asked me about this. They said, what about microservice? I was like, okay, yeah, but sometimes microservices can be, not a good choice. Depends on what you have. And the interviewer, I forgot his name, but he was like, you could tell like from his facial expression, he was offended. He was like, "Why do you say that?" And I was like, I literally have a chapter on it in my book, which is coming out later this year. And it was like, you could tell like his facial impression went from like being angry almost to like impressed, you know.
but I mean, I love that because so many architects are, it's true, like a golden hammer, like
Yes.
one solution for everything. But
Yes.
let's be realistic about microservices. It has incredible advantages, a lot more than we realize, but there's also some downsides. Um,
Yeah, yeah. It's like I said, for for 90% of organization, microservices are not just technical solution. They're really expensive organizational tax paid to compensate the inability to manage human communication, right?
mm,
It's really that's what it is. I put it like bluntly as that. So it's just that um in my opinion, microservices applies to many situations, and it has tremendous benefits, which I outlined in the book, and of course, like I wrote a book about it. But it's very important to understand where it's its weakness and where it is adding complexity where it shouldn't add complexity and where it shouldn't be used. So if you
uh,
understand that part, the rest is it comes with it. The rest is really like okay, as long as you can avoid those um, gotchas or smells or traps, right? You should be on the clear. Uh, and of course, the rest of it is you understand your software, you understand your domain, you understand how people work. There's so many things. It's like I said, the thing of the art of software being software architect is not just to do things like copy paste something from somewhere or use a thing that you did in the past. It's really like you go to a tailor and it he or she creates a suit or something just for you, for your body, for your style, for your size. And that's really what architecture is. And it should evolve also, by the way. And if it doesn't evolve, if you write a software that does not, it's not, um, it doesn't have the ability to evolve over time, it's doomed. It's gonna add to the complexity. I think that somebody calculated this. It's not even linear. It's like actually uh, it's quadruple the rate of as the time goes by. It's like a power of the two or power of the four. I'm not sure which one adds to the technical depth of your code as you go. Because originally when you start, there are things that you don't know, the things you do, the things you don't know.
right.
It's that yeah,
I know,
they're
and I
hidden
love
depth.
that point. It's like, listen, if architecture isn't custom fit like a tailor, you know what I mean?
Yes,
And what's more, if we can't iterate on it, we can't
yes,
change over time.
yes.
Probably
Alter.
not going to be a good choice.
Yes,
Probably not going to
alteration
end
and
well.
of course, modification. That's how the software is. And by the way, that's literally you read that thing. There's a good book. And by the way, your book on DevOps as well. I was reading some of the parts. It hasn't arrived yet. I ordered it, but um, there is another book on DevOps that talks about this. Is that basically you are um yeah, so you basically have to evolve over time. So you can't just apply something, but you have to evolve over time, and you have to be flexible. It's like we used to have software that was installed, but now we put the software into the thing that it's really hard to change. But now we made the process and everything so hard, so the software that is malleable is something that you can change. It became so hard to change. And it's
Right.
just the thing about it is like it used to be just one machine. That machine went to like a LAN, like a network of machine, and then it went to cloud, and it went to uh, multiple things. It's centralized. Now it came back to the device that's like on your phone or something. But but still, the problem is the same. The software has to be patched, has to be updated, has to be kept fresh. Otherwise it will just lose its purpose.
Right. Yeah. And I love in the book you say something interesting. You say, um, encouraging innovation also means allowing some latitude for creative solutions. So there might be multiple ways to solve a problem, like around
Of course.
orchestration
Yes.
in microservices. But if you mandate rigidly, this is how we're going to be solving this problem,
That's right.
it might stifle a lot of good ideas. Instead, consider guidelines, let teams innovate within them.
That's
So
exactly right.
like Amazon classically, they said, hey, we're going to be doing all communication via REST, but that was
Yeah.
it. The team's
Yeah.
implementation, they could decide internally
Yes.
what architecture and libraries to use.
That's
They could
right.
try a different database if it works better,
That's
right?
right. That's exactly right. As long as
That's
you have
such a
like a
cool
broad
thing
set
about
of rules.
microservices, though,
And
that,
by
that
the way,
each
this
team can
is
solve their own way. Yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
exactly. Something like I want to mention also like, inner sourcing that I also mentioned in the book. The inner sourcing is the same idea. You literally have like open source, but within your organization, right? So there are teams that are doing things, but microservices inadvertently or by product of microservices that now the teams go back into doing their own thing, being in silo, which is like kind of like the opposite of what you want, right? You don't want the team to go in silo, but you want the autonomy, you want the freedom and independence of release cycle and everything. That's good, but you don't want them to be in silos. So to remedy that, the inner sourcing, which is a coined phrase, I believe by GitHub, I could be wrong, that GitHub coined it, is that within the organization, everybody can see everybody's source codes. So
Uh-huh.
there are teams, there are like core engineering teams that develop frameworks. I've seen this in Walmart when I was working at Walmart, that they're really good at this stuff. They develop a really good um, you know projects or frameworks that only Walmart internally uses, but different teams using it. Not because not it, it's not that there's no dependency. It's not that it has its own database or anything. It's just a framework. It's a stateless framework that they can
Right.
just use as either NuGet package or they actually don't. They're all Java based. So it's all uh, you know Java packages. But anyway, so it's encouraging the idea of sharing, but also each team has their own thing, so they can pick and choose these tools, right, to implement in their software. So now you're not um, repeating the don't repeat yourself. You are following that don't repeat yourself principle, but also you don't have this monolithic thing that you depend on some other software. So it's like more like a library of tools or you know packages that internally you use, but it's also making sure that you also your software is coherent, like you were saying. Like you can also like impose some sort of restrictions on like everybody using REST or gRPC or whatever that is, right?
Right.
Which is kind of like limiting if you do that, but it's just for the sake of examples, like let's do that, right? But yeah, like you can say, for example, for authentication, use this and that. As long as you're following these guidelines, you're good. So we don't want to enforce you to use like this and that and that and that, but just the high level guidelines to make sure you adhere to the principle and to the policy of the company, right? But if you can use these are the best practices, right? You can use this one, this one, this one, and it kind of like encourages the spirit of sharing. And also, like I've seen like multiple people from different teams committing to that core projects, that core engineering team that say, "Oh, yeah, it's a good thing, but I'm looking at the source code. It could be better." If
Right.
somebody in some team can have some idea that works out for others. So that's kind of like an idea of sharing code, but also not limiting others from doing things. Because now if I say, "Oh, let me write your software," now you're basically binding the other team from moving too fast or moving too slow, wherever the rate is, right? So you don't do that. You get the both advantages, like you the advantage of sharing code, but also advantage of like having that full autonomy. That makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. This is great. All right, Sepehr. So the book is entitled Understanding Microservices with .NET. Covers almost just about everything you need to know for those of us getting into domain-driven design and implementing and running production microservices. So
Yep.
I love the book. I think you will too. I hope everyone watching this gets
Thank you.
take some time to read through it. Sepehr, terrific work on your book.
Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate your support and great. Thank you. Thank you very much.